Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you this morning. It's not my first time to Bartow County, not my second time. You know, I've been involved with the Georgia Republican Party for a lot of years and helping grow our party and get Republicans elected all across the state. And as many of you know, we've got 159 counties. We're only second in the nation, Texas being number one at 160. And there's a lot of ground to cover. But we have been a Republican state, a red state for many years, and we certainly will continue to do that as we work together to, again, grow our party and make sure Republicans are elected and reelected and implementing policies that are based on the principles that we believe and that work for all Americans. And, you know, as we know with Donald Trump's victory and his slogan of making America great again, well, of course, we're having to make it great again because of the liberal agenda that has taken our country in a place that we could have not ever imagined. But we're on the right track now, and it's an exciting time. For those of you that have never met me, I'll just take a few minutes to share a little bit about me. I'm a Georgia native. I grew up in Rennes, Georgia. It's in Jefferson County, about 30 minutes from Augusta. And you know, I was so blessed to have a mother and a father, and it makes such a difference when you can have both your parents there with you and supporting you, making sure you're going to church and getting a good foundation with our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and being involved in the community. And the reason that I was able to have a good mother and father to take care of me is because at 9 months old I was adopted. And so the right to life and protecting the unborn is a hugely important issue for me because without the conservatives like us fighting for the unborn, then many of them won't come into this world and won't be able to fulfill the God-given destiny and meet people and grow and do all the things that we're able to do. And so I'm thankful for that opportunity. And I'm here today because my birth mother made the right choice. You know, and so I grew up in Rennes, Georgia there, and I was the salutatorian in my high school. I was involved in Boy Scouts, and I'm proud to tell you I'm an Eagle Scout. And you know, the thing about being in scouting and being an Eagle Scout, it's all about God and country. So my whole life has been about serving God and country. I graduated from Georgia Southern University with a degree in criminal justice. Served in the Georgia Army National Guard, came to Atlanta and was a police officer for 14 years in Fulton County. And seen a lot of things, probably write a few books. I'm a senior post instructor, Peace Officers Training and Peace Officers Standards and Training Council, which oversees law enforcement in Georgia, and there are other agencies similar in other states. And so training is very important, growing and making sure that we're better tomorrow than we are today. I currently serve as an executive with the Georgia Department of Juvenile Justice. That's about a 4,000 person agency with a budget of over $300 million. I have, in some capacity, managed every area within the agency except for our parole staff, our probation staff rather. So investigations, human resources, our transportation, our detention facilities, our policy, our legislative affairs. I've had to manage millions of dollars in budget, as little as about $7 million and upwards to $35 or $40 million, hiring people, firing people, making sure that our priorities are in order, you know, cutting back where we need to cut back, and otherwise managing a great deal of important aspects of our agency for the last few years. In politics, and your chairman mentioned, I served as chairman of the Georgia Black Republican Council. I was political director of the Georgia Young Republicans. I was first, before anybody knew my name, ended up being an alternate delegate to the 2008 National Convention when we had John McCain as our candidate. I've served, obviously, currently as the first vice chair of the party. And part of when I ran for first vice chair, I said, you know, the media is not going to do us any favors, and we need to make sure people understand that we as Republicans care about people. And so I ran in part on the quote that we've heard many times about people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I started the Community Service Committee of the Georgia Republican Party and chair that. And some of the things that we've done there, we raised thousands of dollars for families and children that are having to get health care at Children's Health Care of Atlanta. You know, when those families go for an appointment, it's not, you know, 30 minutes in and out. It's days and weeks because these kids are really sick. And so we raise cash and gift cards to help them. We help feed homeless veterans with Veterans Empowerment Organization here in Georgia. That organization helps homeless veterans get jobs, counseling, whatever they may need, and we've worked with them. We also, in Douglas County that my wife and I live, we helped give out Christmas gifts to underprivileged kids just about a year ago in that community. And so it's important to show that, and I'm so proud of conservatives like you all around the state that have given towards that. And that leads me into talking about some of the areas of importance for our party going forward, and one of them being fundraising and being good stewards of what we bring in. And when I think about the fundraising we did with the Community Service Committee, I think about how people gave, and it wasn't, you know, $1,000 checks or $500 or even $100, but it was $5 and $10 and $15 and $20 and $25 that people gave, and we were able to raise a lot of money to help people. And so when we think about our fundraising, obviously we need to work with individuals that can write the big checks. And I can tell you, having helped make fundraising calls for the Georgia Republican Party, a lot of people are not giving right now because, quite frankly, obviously we've got some issues. We've had a lawsuit, a racial discrimination lawsuit that hasn't been settled yet. And the person that brought that suit was an employee of the Georgia Republican Party who just happened to be a convicted felon. And so there was no background check done on that person. And so we've got part of our debt, a large part of our debt is the legal fees that have been accumulating, and then there's got to be a settlement. And then, you know, we've had some special elections where we've got some good quality conservatives running, and we had to file with the Secretary of State's office, and we had late filings, and that got news coverage. You know, we're spending more than we're bringing in right now. And just like in our own homes, you know how much you bring in every week, every month. And, you know, if you say, like my wife and I say, we're going to go on vacation over the summer. We know where we want to go. We do the research on how much it costs. We know what we bring in. We know when we want to go. And so we have to say, this is how much we need to allocate towards the trip so that we can have the money to go when the time comes. Or if, you know, we're going, or if we see in our bank books, and we keep the books and we look and see what's going in, what's going out, and we say, well, you know, we're just spending too much. And, oh man, I, you know, had to use that credit card instead of using the money that was in the bank account. Well, maybe we need to cut off HBO, or maybe we need to stop going out to dinner every Friday night. But the fact is that no matter what organization we're talking about, whether it's in your home, a state Republican Party, whatever, you've got to see what you're bringing in and not spend more than you bring in. And if that means, you know, cutting back on some things that we've been doing until we're on better standing, then you do that. You do that. And you know, I think one of the things that we have to have is staff that can multitask. You know, so I use a football analogy of, you know, the offensive line, and you know, you don't just need an offensive lineman that can just play right guard. They need to be able to play left guard and center. They need to be able to do multiple things and get the most out of the monies that we're spending on staff. So in talking with the people that have been writing the checks, they said, listen, we're just not going to give right now because we need to see a change in leadership. We need to see someone that can communicate a vision, that brings a high level of professionalism, that's making good decisions, because no matter how much money you bring in, if you're not a good steward of what comes in, then what good are you really doing for the cause that we believe in here in Georgia? So they said, well, you're going to have this chairman's race. Let's see what the outcome of that is, and we want to give. We want to give. And so I'm confident in having talked to those individuals, asking them to give to the party, that they will come back and help us do the things that we need to do in Georgia. And a part of that, again, is not just looking to folks that can write the big checks, but I think we all must have buy-in and have skin in the game in what we're doing. So we need to have a program where we say, hey, listen, you know, here's a level of $100 or $50 or $250, and have incentives to go with that, just like we do for those higher dollar donations. And we need to have fundraisers in other parts of the state. You just shouldn't have to feel like you got to come to Atlanta and buy a $250 ticket and go to the Marriott or wherever and hear somebody speak. We got to do that too, but it shouldn't just all be that. We should be able to come here to Bartow and have a barbecue and bring in our elected officials and friends. And you write a check that works for you, but you're being a part of what's going on. And it's in your community. So you're more invested because these are people that I know. These are elected officials in the community. And I'm being a part of something that works for all of us. 159 counties. No one should ever feel like there's this pedestal in Atlanta where everything's getting done. And that's one of the things that, having grown up in a small community, I remember what it was like to be overlooked and everybody focusing on what's going on in Atlanta, Georgia. But we all bring value. We're all important. We're all God's children, and we're all good conservatives, and we need to come to you. Come to you in with fundraising, come to you with our training. We need to ensure that as we start delegate processes that people know what that means. What does it mean to be a delegate? How do you get involved? We've got people that supported Donald Trump that are new, hadn't been involved before. And we want them to come in and stay. But what are we doing to train them to understand the process? Our candidates for elected office, what training are we providing? How are we telling them how much it costs to run for office? What are the qualifications? What do you need to do? How are we training our grassroots to write letters to the editor and understand the intricacies of campaign finance? All these other issues that get talked about in the party and in the media, we need to bring that training to you, and we need to work with our county parties to make sure it's a training that fits and works for you. Because you know your communities, you know the subdivisions, you know the streets, you know the people, the churches, and all these other entities that are here. We need to work with you to do that. And your chairman needs to come to you and come and join you at some of your county meetings and executive meetings and say, how can I help you? What are we doing right at the state? What are we doing wrong? And how can we specifically help you do the things that you need to do here? Because as conservatives, we talk about everything being local. Well, if that's true, then we need to start with what we're doing in the grassroots of the Georgia Republican Party at the local level. And we've got to grow our party, and we can do that based on the principles that we have. I served as Georgia Black Republican Council Chair. I was political director of Young Republicans. I've gone to college campuses and had events, historically black college and Payne College. We worked with C.L. Bryant. How many of you all know C.L. Bryant or know Runaway Slave? Okay, we got some more folks that need to see that documentary. C.L. Bryant was a pastor in Louisiana. He lost his church because he told him he was a Republican. He has since been doing work with Freedom Works, and he did a documentary on the concerns we all have regarding liberalism and focusing on minority communities and individuals that have made that transition away from how they grew up or what they were told about Republicans and Democrats. And it's a great documentary. I was in that documentary and helped do editing on that and put out a great product. And C.L. Bryant, I just saw him last week, and he's working on another project. He's going to be supporting me, looking forward to supporting me for chair and doing some great things. But we have to grow our party. And when we go, it can't be Michael McNeely going to the black community and this person that's Hispanic going to the Hispanic community. We've got to do it together. And again, it's the same set of principles. We don't alter that when we talk to people. Some examples, school choice and the charter school amendment. That amendment passed in a bipartisan way. Republicans and Democrats, people from all communities, because they understood that they wanted their children to go to the best school possible, and it should not be based solely on where they live. Governor Deal, when he ran for re-election, I asked him to come to my church. My church has got about 20,000 members. It's a 4,000 seat sanctuary, and I'm thankful my pastor is a good conservative Republican. But normally he doesn't let officials come and speak. But I talked to him, and he was willing to do it because of criminal justice reform, juvenile and adult. And so he came, and he didn't speak more than 5 minutes, and he shared what Republicans were leading the way on and doing, so that young people hold them accountable, but make sure that they have a path for making a better way for themselves. Adults. People make mistakes, but you shouldn't be trapped in that mistake for the rest of your life. Reform around that. And he spoke 5 minutes about that. And in a room of people that I would say easily 90+% were voting Democrat, they gave that man a standing ovation. They didn't give him a standing ovation because he's a Republican. They gave him a standing ovation because of the principles that we believe in the Republican Party. And it made a difference in the election. It's making a difference now as I continue to work with individuals there and across our state that may not label themselves as Republicans, but I can assure you are conservative. Part of what the chairman is, that person leads the party and he's the spokesman of the party. So that individual, what are you hearing from them? What is the perception out there with the media and people that are contemplating whether they want to be involved with the Republican Party? So it's important who we choose. And the Georgia Republican Party is a grassroots organization. Grassroots, the people that are rolling up their sleeves, doing the work, making the phone calls, going door to door, coming to meetings like this and not introducing themselves for the first time, but having been there and done that. We need individuals that can work with our Republican elected officials. And, we've got Senator Thompson here, and I got to tell you, we're not doing enough to work with you. It shouldn't just be that we invite you to come speak at a chicken dinner. It shouldn't be that, hey, it's election time. I haven't missed many. It's not enough to say, well, just go vote for Republican during the election cycle. It's what is it that you're working on? What are the bills that you want to present? What are the ideas you have? How can we help you promote that? How can we help support that? And I think one of the things that the Republican Party has to do is put information out about the bills that are being proposed, about the facts and how they line up with our principles. Let them know the committee assignments that have been made on certain legislation. Say, hey, as the chairman of the Georgia Republican Party, if we got a big issue that we need a lot of support for, Georgia Republican Party pay for some vans to come pick some folks up that want to come to some of these meetings and be a part to support our elected officials right here in our communities. The chairman of the Georgia Republican Party ought to have a hand on the pulse of what's going on all across the state. So if we have a seat that we can pick up and we've got a good conservative candidate, we need to be talking about that person and make sure the resources are provided to help. Data on demographics, opportunities to phone bank through the state party apparatus if need be, whatever it is that we need to do to help. I was down in Henry County, a candidate named June Wood, black female Republican. She was retired from Georgia Power, an engineer by education and trade, good, conservative, quality candidate. And the Henry County Republican Party there, as well as many other people from outside of that community, myself included, went down there, went door to door, made phone calls, wrote checks, helped with her with strategy. And in a county that is leaning Democrat these days, she won, and she won handedly. And it is a testament to what we can do across our state and our country if we as Republicans commit. And it doesn't have to be somebody that lives right here in your community, but when we make our influence felt in other parts of our state, we can win. We've got so many great things that we can do going forward, and we see Donald Trump already doing some great things, and there's excitement in the air. And so we don't want to take anything for granted here in Georgia. We want to continue to see our Republican Party grow and our elected Republicans stay in office and do the great work that they're doing. And everything we do, make sure we're standing on a solid foundation of the conservative principles that we believe in. I am both a fiscal and a social conservative. I know that those principles work. I know that that's what has made our country great and is making it great again. I could say so much more, and there's something I'm sure I've forgotten that I would love to share with you, and maybe it will come out in an opportunity with question and answer if we've got a few minutes for that, because it's important that I hear from you and take what you're saying, incorporate it into who I am as a grassroots leader in our party. And as we prepare through this election cycle, or the delegate cycle rather, make sure that whoever you choose, and I certainly would ask that you choose me, that person is grassroots, that person has a good relationship with our Republican elected officials, that has a relationship with our business community, but understanding that the party and its chairman should not be beholden to any of them. If we've got a Republican elected official and we've got some disagreements based on some principles, then we need to talk about that and do it respectfully. But we need to do that. The business community, yeah, we want them to write us checks to the party and help us out, but they shouldn't be able to dictate what we do and who we are as a party because of what they give. We have to be independent. And when we talk about where our problems are with our party and being able to fix that, some folks will tell you, well, just get rid of everybody that's been in leadership currently. Drain the swamp. Exactly, drain the swamp. Well, let's look at that. Donald Trump said, drain the swamp. But let's look at the realities of what he did and who he's brought in. He's brought in some outsiders, the Tillermans and other folks that haven't been involved in government. But then he's kept some people around that would be labeled establishment. Tom Price, Rick Perry, Nikki Haley. I mean, we could go on down the line of people. So he has found a balance. And so when people start saying, get rid of everybody, come on now. And we hear that term establishment, but somebody in this room mentioned to me just the other day about establishment and shortening that and talking about establish. When people get labeled establishment, it becomes a bad term, but really what people that have been around and have some experience that have done, they've established something. They've grown something, they've made something. So we need to have a balance of that. You don't just get rid of good people because things aren't going well all the time. And if you look at the party rules, it's not like when you run for president and vice president where it's a ticket. When you run for offices within the party, the candidates run their race, the first vice, second vice run theirs. And in the party rules, the first vice chair, the duties will serve in the absence of the chairman or will do the duties assigned by the chairman. Rule 5.2, look at it. And when you talk about getting rid of officers in the party, it takes 2/3 of the state committee. State committee is about 150 people from around the state. So if people come and tell you, well, you just get rid of that person or do this or do that, let's look at the realities. Because we're not the Democrats. We don't run our operation based on emotion. We run our operation based on facts. Independent from all these other entities, striking a balance between those that have been here and new faces, growing our party, and making it great again. Thank you so much for having me.
Michael, I appreciate you coming up here. I know it's a little bit of a drive for you to get up here, but we've talked about this. I know I've talked to Lewis about this. I got sideways a little bit with the administration that we have currently in place when they asked for something from me, and I said, what are you doing to help the local party?
Right.
You know, I'm a firm believer, you know, the Braves did very well when their farm teams were strong, right? Alabama did very well when you talk to Nick Saban because they backfilled. Cartersville's done very well because they backfilled and made sure that when you come into the organization that you're equipped, you're trained, you buy in, and you have an opportunity to move up. And I would say from my perspective, you don't have to say it, but I'll say it from my perspective, the challenge that we've had in the Georgia the state party is that it's been established, I don't know, not establishment, but established, and they haven't been open to be able to come down to these meetings. I mean, when I've talked to Lewis before, I said, what are we doing to help the local parties, they don't get paid,
Right.
to grow where these things are packed and these people are asking to be able to move up and to help versus coming down and say, we need. If you start at the bottom and you grow these up, you'll have all the volunteers you'll need. You'll have all the resources you need. So when you talk about that, I appreciate the fact that your heart and your pulse is on that. The other thing I would say, and I think that we found this through the recent elections, right, is transparency. People want transparency. We can agree to disagree on some things, but we need transparency. And so when we have a situation like the lawsuit, there's some people in the room right now going, what are you talking about lawsuit? It's been going on for a long period of time, right?
Right.
When we have the situation that happened in Cobb County with our chair that was there, right?
Right.
I would disagree with people that would say, well, Cobb County's going blue. I ran polls. I paid for, I represented part of Cobb. I think what happened is, and is happening in Cobb, is people are disgusted with what's happened, so they quit voting for a person or a party, and they just said, you know what, I'll just skip that one and I'll vote to here. And I think that's mainstream America. So, and you know where I stand with this, so we'll wait at the right time. as you get involved and as you assume that role in the state, I would just say, please don't forget, not necessarily where you came from, but the people at the bottom are the ones that are going to make America great, right?
Right.
And communicate and be transparent. And when you do that, you're going to have all the resources and people and financial support that you have. And I appreciate your commitment to your faith as well, because more, that silent majority that we've had, more and more people need to do that.
That's right. Thank you, Senator. And he's absolutely right. When you're with family, you ought to be able to be transparent with family. And if something's not right, you fix it. And we'll celebrate when things are, but we move it forward and do it together. Yes, sir.
I had an opportunity to listen to Simon Sinek the other day, somebody I really like, and he was talking about how employers need to really modify and think differently about how they recruit, train, and lead millennials. Something I'm really passionate about too. And so I know you touched on it a little bit, but I feel like right now we've kind of just ceded that group of people to the Democrats, and we really need to be much more focused in how we're going to pull that group and that demographic into the party. You have any thoughts on how we can kind of attract and go after them a little bit differently?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in whatever group you're talking about, you have to go where people are. You can't expect everybody just to come to the county party meetings. You got to go, and you got to do it consistently. I think that, as I said, being a fiscal and a social conservative, I believe I'm a conservative through and through. But you have to target what are the issues that young people want to hear about. And it's not that you're ignoring the rest of them, but you just understand these are their top 3 issues. College students getting a job after they get finished with college, student loans, things like that. How is we as conservatives addressing those issues, and how do we then target those individuals? And a part of it is when we go, we should know who the membership is in college Republicans. 4 years of college, and then they move on. Now, we as a party should know of those individuals, how many are going to remain in the state versus leaving, and what are they interested in? Do they want to be elected officials one day? Do they want to help the party? And know enough about who's there so that we can continue to plug them in and work with them for years to come. One of the things that I found as having been a young Republican and working with those that are young Republicans and college Republicans is that we want them to come and do phone banking door to door during election time, and then the rest of the time we forget about them. We do. And you have these $250 ticket dinners, and we have a lot of empty seats there. But we're not bringing those young people in to get them exposure to what's going on in Atlanta. Why aren't we doing that? And for those that aren't Republicans, or maybe they don't identify that way yet, again, going where people are and focusing on the issues, and not talking bad about Obama because he's a Democrat. Talk bad because of the principles and the policies that he's implemented. And I think the reasonable person, and I think the majority of people that you run into are reasonable, will say, well, that makes sense because you're focusing on the issues and not a person. And I've already been, in fact, I'm going to be going to UGA and talking to their college Republicans in the next few weeks, and some other schools around the state, and talking more specifically about this and getting people on board with me to help. If I'm, certainly if I'm successful in becoming chair, being a part of the team. We have an executive committee, we have a state committee, but for me, I want to have a kitchen cabinet as well. Some people, they don't have to be elected through the party, but they can have influence and have influence from different parts of our state and different ages and whatnot to help us do what we do. Yes, sir.
I hope you don't mind if I read a passage of scripture.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Christ said to the Laodiceans, "You say, I am rich, I have acquired wealth, and do not need a thing. But you do not realize that you are wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked." And Christ said to the Laodiceans, "Those I love, I rebuke, and discipline and rebuke, so be earnest and repent." I'm not part of what you people call conservative. The problem I have with the conservative mindset, it is uncritically, unskeptically accepted false ideas. And this game of political theatrics actively avoids simple facts, like Karen Handel actively campaigned against touchscreen voting machines. She has an R next to her name. She backs with it and puts in the very machine she campaigned against.
Mark, is there
I believe in accountability, but you've got to be consistent. And the thing is, If the Taliban was right all along when they said this evidence you gave us does not prove bin Laden caused 9/11,
Mark.
then aren't the real terrorists the people that lied to us?
Okay.
Right? We need to have
Mark.
consistent accountability. That's it.
Okay. Well, you're talking about a lot of things that the state party in Georgia can't fix. And we're going to focus on the areas where we can. Yes, sir.
In your presentation, the one theme that I hear throughout the whole thing is communication.
Yes.
And the Georgia GOP chairwoman prior to John Padgett, I can't remember.
Sue Everhart.
Yeah. She put out a newsletter.
Yes, she
I don't
did.
know whether it was monthly, but it was on a regular basis about things that were going on around the state, information, and it was communication.
Yes.
John Padgett, the only thing I get from him is some reactive something that went on once in a while. I'm not a John Padgett supporter. What is your vision, idea, outline to maybe start another newsletter so
Yeah.
that we communicate? We know what's going on around the state and what's happening. Do you have some vision for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you mentioning that because, yes, we should have a newsletter that, I mentioned earlier about informing people about what's going on during the legislative session, for example. What's being proposed and how does that line up with our principles? That's one aspect. And then when we talk about our county parties and working with our county parties, well, I would think that people around the state want to know what's going on in other parts of the state. What's going on here in Bartow County? What are you celebrating here? What events do you have that are going on? Where have you been successful? Where can we help? Part of newsletters, hey, for example, there's this candidate A, good Republican, he or she's in a competitive race. Their election is this time. Their opponent is this type of person, bad liberal, and say, hey, can you help? And link them back to the county party. See, my vision for the party is not the state parties over here and all the counties are out here. It should be a cohesive unit. One of the things that I was able to do when I ran for first vice chair is I had people that supported me, that supported Padgett, that supported the other two opponents during the chairman's race. Because I looked at the big picture and I found the common ground where we come together. That ties into fundraising, it ties into enthusiasm amongst the grassroots, all of that. If we're letting people know what's going on, the good, the challenges where we need help, and the policies are being implemented at under the Gold Dome. So yes, a newsletter that comes out, and I think monthly, because we've got a lot of good things we're doing as Republicans, and have whether it be our county chairs, district chairs, or others, send that information in, and somebody put together the newsletter with pictures and links and other informative information, and put that out to folks, because you need to know that. You deserve to know that. Yes, sir.
One thing I was gonna kind of pull you aside and talk to you about, but since you brought it up in your presentation, I'll go ahead and just bring it out. You mentioned some of the expenses we have as far as the lawsuit and the campaign and stuff. As you know, I sit on the 11th District Committee, and a couple of months ago we had the state party treasurer come and, at our request, give us a presentation about basically the state of the finances of the party. And we did that because in a previous meeting there had been some pretty strong disagreement between the committee members as to whether to, I think it was purchase the membership to the foundation. And the concern obviously was regarding how the money was being spent. And one of the things that Mr. McCord brought up was, for example, just the overhead cost. I think he said the rent at the current facility is something like $72,000 a year. And we've got 8-9 employees in that facility, and he talked about struggling to not only pass an operating budget, but to get the chairman, senior committee to adhere to that budget. And you referenced that specifically in your conversations with the big donors.
Yeah.
So I guess the overarching question is, what specifically do you have in mind as far as to implement? I mean, because we, like you say, we're conservatives in here in Georgia,
Right.
And so fiscal responsibility is a big thing with us, and I know a lot of people that are hesitant to donate right now because
Right.
they just don't know that the money's
Right.
being used, responsibly.
Right.
So I guess just what is your kind of overarching vision for how to handle that? And, what's the money gonna go to? Where can we find, potential savings and current overhead costs? Cause it's a little frustrating and embarrassing to, open the AJC and, see an article hitting us about,
Right.
the financial woes.
Well, yeah, let me give you some specific examples. So you mentioned the headquarters, the state party headquarters. If you haven't been there, it's a large building. And when the chair of the party has 2 offices in the headquarters, then you got wasted space. So we need to look at, and I know when Sue was chair, she signed a long-term lease on that. But we need to look at what would it cost us to break the lease, and would it be better to do that and get somewhere else? We need to look at that. And there are other parts of the state we can put that headquarters. I mean, it's in Buckhead right now, and there's a lot of congestion right there. Why not get somewhere out on the perimeter? So it's a little more accessible to people coming from different parts of the state. So that's one thing. I talked about earlier about staff being able to multitask. I think we need to look at who we have that we're paying to be there every day and what can they do. And we need to be specific about that. You don't just need to have a title. What is it you're specifically doing? How are we measuring what you're doing and make sure that you're doing the job so that when we say we're spending money, then we're doing it in the right way and we're able to communicate that to our state committee, our executive committee, and anybody else who wants to hear, quite frankly. We need to stop the bleeding. So again, we're spending more than we're bringing in. We might have to make some tough decisions. We might have to say of the staff that are there, are there some positions that maybe we'd like to have, but that we just can't afford right now, and make the cuts. When we talk about the newsletter, I mean, we got a good guy that does our communications. They manage the Facebook, the Twitter. They do occasional press release or whatnot. But for the amount of money we're paying, we need to get more out of that. We need that, somebody like that to be traveling around the state, coming to your meeting, taking some pictures and doing some interviews for the content of the newsletter, for example. Some things like that. Let's explore how we maximize our dollars. Another thing is that when we have state committee meetings and whatnot, we don't just need to have the numbers on a screen and you can barely see it and you don't get copies of it. That needs to be given out to everyone so that there's more transparency and you can take that information home and look at it and really evaluate it. Now, some have said, well, if we do that, somebody might go to the media. Well, so what? If something's not right, it's just not right. And we got to fix it. And if you don't identify the problem and then implement a plan, you don't get it fixed. And so when we talk about the debt, look at the amount of debt we have and say, okay, how much are we going to allocate each month to pay down this debt? We've got a President's Day dinner coming up, one of the big ticket dinners coming up real soon. Should have some type of profit in that. How much of that are we going to allocate to the debt? Because back to talking to those folks they're giving the money, they need to see us fixing it. And listen, it's not insurmountable. It's not something we can't fix, but we have to start doing something now. That's part of the problem, is that we're just letting it linger. And it's going to be there for the next chair. But if somebody that understands the fundamentals of money's coming in and coming out, that understands being able to look at how we can reduce the amount of expenditure we have, we can fix it, and I think in a relatively short time. We've got the resources throughout our state to help us do that, but those individuals are not going to write a check like they're paying a bill. They're writing a check because they believe in the organization, and they have to see leadership that has a plan that's strong and it's not going to embarrass them when they do write that check.
I absolutely agree that it is not insurmountable, and I guess that's probably the biggest frustration is it's not insurmountable.
Right.
We've just not shown a commitment to being fiscally responsible.
Exactly.
And that's just unacceptable for Republicans.
It is unacceptable. And I'm one of those, listen, you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer, whatever that may be. And you got to have somebody that's willing to put their foot down and make the tough decisions. That's part of leadership, is making hard decisions. You're not going to please everybody when you do that. In fact, I would tell you that in your life, if you don't make somebody mad along the way, you're not doing enough. So I'm willing to do that because
You're doing way too much.
well, I don't want to, I want to respect the time, but I mean, I'm here for you. So as long as you want to do it.
I agree a lot with your platform, and coming on the back of what our chair said. When we were at the district, I mean, as a group, financially, where our state finances were, I mean, they were adamant. Forgetting, and then on an individual basis, after the meeting was over, individuals said, I'm not giving.
Yeah.
So the small donors that normally give don't give. So I think that is a top issue that we need to really address. Another issue that you mentioned is education, and I've been saying this. We have people at the local level, as simple as what are the functions of the precinct chair? And several years ago, there was training because one of the individuals I worked with, that she was the precinct chair, had gone to a state meeting that provided the training. That has all been lost. So we have individuals that get elected at the precinct to be on the executive board, and when you have a group like ours, and I'm going to be real honest, we have a group like ours, a lot of the responsibility and work falls on the chairman, and the first vice chair. And if you're new, they don't have enough time to do the training. To be honest, I mean, some of them are working 2 jobs, some are working a whole job, and 1 job, and they don't have the available time to do the training. They have the knowledge, but they don't have the time to do the training. And we get these people that come in and they tell us all the things that we should be doing, but how do you do it? What are the rules, and stipulations that are done in the rules for the Georgia Republican Party? And so you have a mass of people that come to the meetings, they listen to the speaker, or if it's during election, they listen to the candidates and they get the information there, but that's as far as it goes. I think education and communication is critical, not only to the growth of the Georgia Republican Party, but the local, because we don't have the tools, and in many cases we don't have the funds to bring somebody in.
Well, it goes back to what I was talking about with training, and I've had some people give me some training manuals that they have from different counties, as well as hearing people's ideas and whatnot. So I think you have a framework for delegate process. You have a framework for campaign related items. You have a framework for party rules and things like that. You build a framework, and then you allow some folks to look at it and say, okay, is this hitting the mark? Are we missing something? Do some tweaks. Then, I think, as I said, it starts at the county, so there should be that training once it's established and uniform, so we're all doing the same thing the same way. It's done there. But then if there are challenges where there are not enough people getting the access to it, we can do regional. We can say, well, let's do 3 or 4 counties together for a big Super Saturday or something. So you provide fundamental and basic opportunities that are regularly occurring, but then based on the circumstances, you can make an adjustment and do something that brings in more people where we can get more bang for our buck. So I think that, you set a framework and a foundation, but then, every day, just like in my personal life, I evaluate, I adjust and improve. So while I'm doing a lot of things right, because some circumstances might change, I might need to tweak it. So we need to be willing to do that too, and I think that's an easy fix.
Just 3 quick questions.
Sure.
The first, because there can be one-word answers you can refuse to answer.
I wouldn't refuse it.
Well, as a politician, because now you're in the political realm,
Yeah.
Usually you don't talk about who else is running, right?
Well, that is the rule, yes.
Don't give credibility to anyone else.
Right.
But has anyone else announced, or are they out?
Yes. So one person that has been talked about, I know, is not running, and that's Mr. Johnson in Cobb. There are 3 candidates announced thus far. I was the first to announce. I announced September 9th. A lot of people were asking me about it. I wanted to let people know. And then there was the AJC subsequently picked up on it and wrote an article. And then that was all I said about it until after the election and we won, and I started talking to folks more specifically. The second candidate was the candidate that has ran multiple times now and lost, that's running again. And another Johnson, different Johnson. But, you know, he's got the same story. He's representing to the people over and over again. He wants to get rid of everybody. He complains about everything, but he hadn't done anything to help. I mean, specifically help the party in which he wants to lead. And then you have a third candidate who has had involvement with campaigns and successfully helped individuals get elected in Georgia, but has not been a part of the grassroots and is a lobbyist that has conflicting interests and will be introducing himself for the first time to a lot of people.
So that's the first question. The second question is, the same question everyone has asked me, why do you want to do this?
Mm-hmm.
Why does a guy like you want to put your head out there and do this?
Right. And for anybody that doesn't know, I mean, this is not a paid position. And as a note on that, I do have a paid job, but I'm able to do all the things that the chairman needs to do, and I'm doing it right now. And so if anybody tries to say, oh, well, Michael can't do that, that's a lie. Because when I ran for first vice chair, I went through a process with my work, and they were good with it. Same thing here. I do the fundraising calls. I travel to Washington, D.C. I travel around the state, do media. I do phone banking, door to door. I do everything. In fact, I would say I'm doing more than a lot of folks than key leadership positions right now. But why? Oh, I'm going to get to that. I didn't forget. Why? But why am I doing it? You know, years ago, I realized I was a Republican. I got a book on the subject of politics and got on the chapter of political parties and saw my checks were on the Republican side. And so I was like a rubber band. You know, once it's stretched, it never goes back to its original shape. So I was forever changed. And I knew the principles that I believed in and how they impact me, my family, and all of you. And I want to be a part of ensuring that those principles get implemented in policy and in the leadership we have. I know what I bring to the table, the talents and abilities. I know how to effectively communicate these things. I know how to work with people. And I want to be in a position to help us move it forward. I'm not the type to sit on the sidelines and just watch other people do it. I want to be a part of the solution and not ever be a part of a consistent problem. So that's why I'm doing it.
Third question is, and I know a humble heart like yourself, it's difficult to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just put it out there. How can we help you?
How can you help? Thank you for that question. You know, it's one thing for me to come somewhere and speak about why I think I should be the chairman, but it's quite another thing when you, as individuals within your realm of influence, talk to other people and are advocating on my behalf. So if you like what you've heard, if you believe in what I'm saying and feel that I'm in the best position to help our party grow, then I would ask you to pick up the phone and talk to people. Walk up to them and share what you've heard and what you believe in moving this forward. That's one very important thing. I think also, just like in any campaign, we need volunteers. You know, whether you go to a meeting and wear a sticker, we'll be putting out some stickers for the campaign, or passing out information, helping us set up when we go to these different places, especially like at the state convention and at your county conventions and your precincts, and talking about it, some of the handouts like we have here, and sharing that. That's very important. And also, just like in any campaign, we need to raise money through the campaign, because it's not free. Those push cards aren't free. The gas isn't free in the car. So I would ask you to help us do that. And I would say that because of the party being in the shape that it is financially, I think it's good to see our candidates be able to have individuals that believe in them enough to give money. Because it's one thing to say, you know this, you get people say, I support you. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? So are they voting for you? Are they volunteering for you? Or are they donating to you? And especially conservatives, when you write a check, man, you got to believe in somebody, because we don't just hand it out. We're not welfare. And so my website's going to be going live over the weekend. I currently have a Facebook page, Chairman McNeely for Chairman, as well as my personal social media, so Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it.
Donate on it?
It does. The Chairman for McNeely has a donate button, so you can very easily do it that way. Oh, and because we're talking about, that's another thing about the state party, we've got to utilize technology. If I'm your state party chairman and I go somewhere, I want to be able to pull out my phone, put the little attachment at the top and say, you want to donate? Let me have your card. Swipe it right there on the spot. I mean, we ought to utilize that. And when we have meetings, you shouldn't have to just travel all over the place all the time. Let's do some conferencing in. Let's use the technology. When we're helping candidates, let's use the walk apps and other things. So that's just, listen, I didn't just wake up yesterday and say, I want to be chair. I've thought this thing through. I know what works, and I clearly have seen what hasn't worked. And I know that there's no man or woman who's an island unto themselves. Anybody that's ever done anything great or ever will has not and will not do it alone. So we've got to do it together. So thank you for that question.
Technology is great, but I personally kind of like the personal feel of getting a donation request by carrier pigeon. So
Hey, however it comes, it's fine with me.
we've probably got time for maybe one or two other questions, and I'm gonna.
Okay.
Do we have anybody else wants to ask another question?
Anything. I'm here for you.
Just maybe thought of one quick idea. So if on the state party donate, if we put it on our local site, we could be like most fundraising organizations, send y'all 10% and then the local party keep 90%.
Now, we might need to talk about the percentage, but I think if your state party is doing more for you, I think it'll be easier to share the resources. Oh, and I'll tell you, listen, and I've always been like this, and I'll tell you, listen, if you want to talk to me, I'll give you my cell number, my email. I'm very easily to get a hold of. One of the other concerns that I've heard from folks is they call the party and they don't get responses and things like that. That shouldn't happen. That is ridiculous. Unacceptable. You're paying somebody to be there every day and you can't even get a phone call back or a question answered? No.
Now we're paying you?
No, not chairman. I'm talking about the staff that are there every day. Thank you for, let me clarify that. You're not paying me. So, but the staff that are there every day, and then your chairman, you should, that person should be accessible. So if after the meeting you want my information, I'll be glad to give it to you. You can call me with questions, comments, criticisms, whatever it is, because I'm here for you. Contributions as well.
I just give a personal testimony to that I did call you. And then I looked at your social media and you had a pretty full day, but you still took my phone call, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Even take some after hours on weekends.
Yeah, all the time. I'm ready.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and ask the last question since
Okay.
we're kind of getting late on time here. And it's kind of, again, falls in something that you talked about earlier. And honestly, I don't really know the right answer to this question because as chairman, you have to walk a fine line. But at the grassroots level, I mean, and that's what I hear. I mean, I have very few opportunities to, rub elbows with the big donors and, the senior leadership. But I spend a lot of time with these people out here that are the ones that are knocking doors and handing out flyers and phone banking and so forth. And again, I don't know the answer because I don't know what the proper role is or the proper separation. But one of the big frustrations is when you've got people out here that are busting their tails, that are putting out signs in the middle of freezing cold nights or sweating to death knocking doors in the district, and then just to give a very recent high profile example. Conservatives felt like they got kicked in the teeth when Nathan Deal vetoed religious liberty and the campus carry bill. Those were two widely popular bills. They were not extreme bills. And he vetoed both of them because he was getting pressure from the Chamber of Commerce and big corporations and so on and so forth. I understand that we're a big tent party and we've got to be. But when the interests are kind of pitted against each other, I mean, because the Chamber of Commerce, for example, on religious liberty, the Chamber of Commerce is only worried about what's going to impact their revenue stream. The grassroots is looking at newspaper article, a news story about small Christian business owners that are getting sued and put out of business because they declined to bake a cake for a gay wedding or make T-shirts for a gay pride parade. Now, we can agree to disagree civilly on what's the proper policy, but no American, no matter what you believe, should be forced to act in violation of their conscience. And I mean, I wouldn't go to a black baker and ask him to bake a cake for a KKK rally, or to a Jewish baker and ask him to bake a cake for right. I mean, it's a fundamental violation of our rights. But yeah, a lot of times I just don't. I feel like the grassroots is the army that we end up becoming cannon fodder after the election. And again, I mean, I know you've got to walk that fine line because you need the big money donors to be able to run the party and get out the message. But you need the grassroots army too.
Yeah, and it is a fine line. And I would say that, going back to something I was talking about earlier, educating the grassroots on issues. So when issues come up, we're putting out information that is just factual. So whether that lines up with the chamber on one day or lines up with the governor or whatever, it's just facts. So it's not personal attacks. I think relationships, along the way, your chairman and leadership having a relationship with our elected officials. When I say having a relationship, I mean meeting with them periodically, talking to them, sharing the concerns of the grassroots along the way. I think that helps, because what you don't want to do, nobody wants this. You don't want to be, the only time you hear from people is when they feel like you've done something wrong. You need to also balance that with celebrating them and supporting them when they're doing things that you agree with. I personally supported the religious liberty. I did a post about it on my social media because that's just what I believe. I think that's a fundamental of being a Republican. Some of the things that were contained in that bill and some of the things that we're talking about right now. And I did that. So I think that in any criticism, when we talk about Christian principles, we understand you're to speak the truth in love. So you can challenge people and not agree, but do it respectfully, because some of the comments that we heard about the governor and other folks were not appropriate. But I think sticking to the facts and the principles, educating people, and bringing in organizations like a Faith and Freedom, to talk about some of these things, having events like that, it empowers the grassroots to help affect change without attacking a person. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think that's where we can start, and I'm open to talking about other ideas and things, and especially with our elected officials, because you have a different perspective when you're down at the Gold Dome every day and what you hear and what you talk about. How do we improve even more? But I think starting there with a fundamental respect and dealing with facts and giving that to people goes a long way. And we've got partners out there like Faith and Freedom we can work with that will help us with that. Thank you all. Thank you so much.